The foreword. This hastily orchestrated audiobook is brought to you by and for the good people of the Madladverse, who are either concussed, losing their vision, or are otherwise unable to read this unfinished manuscript with their eyes. I will be editing this manuscript as we proceed. Some context for this book. This started out as a Voltron fanfic. I say this knowing full well I will immediately taint your experience with this manuscript, and if you are an ex-Voltron fan, I implore you to sit in this feeling and realize that it's the same exact phenomenon known as, quote-unquote, the game, which you have now lost. You're welcome. In all seriousness, this book has also been converted to center a heterosexual couple, which I also feel I must explain to the jury, because I saw a post the other day that was too questionable for me to share on my story, and you might be wondering, Your Honor, relevance? Just hang on. This post was so questionable, in fact, that I hesitated to even like it in case y'all ever saw my likes, because I don't understand how Instagram works anymore, and so I never liked, saved, or shared it, but from what I remember, it explained a dynamic like this. It's a genre that's half yaoi, half yuri. And I think that perfectly encapsulates this dynamic I will be reading to you against your will presently. Love, Lies, and Loaded Guns. Chapter 1. Arlie never expected to find comfort anywhere in New York City, especially not after the ban on powers. Somehow, after all of her travels, she was back again, for the foreseeable future, just blocks away from the source of her epic change in heart. What? She said. The guy's mouth had just moved, and she registered no words from it. Not a single one. That same smile was now punctuated by dimples. What roast do you prefer, light or dark? Oh, right, duh. Either, I guess. I'm not picky. I'll drink anything. Arlie ought to ship herself back to France. The guy had a beautiful, peppy laugh and a forearm she couldn't stop staring at as he pumped coffee into her cup. He was talking. I ought to be listening, actually, she thought in the background of the guy saying, I get that a lot. You'd be surprised how many amateur coffee drinkers come through here. And, wait, God, sorry. That's not to say you're an amateur coffee drinker. There's just a whole range of snobs versus, you know what, never mind. Talk myself into a hole. Here you go. Arlie stared at the cup being extended to her, her name spelled out in a black marker the correct way. He spelled her name right. No Y, no spontaneous U, no absurd O at the start, just Arlie. She looked up to find his smile teetering, awkward. He nudged the cup up. She took it. What's your name? He hooked a thumb under the pin on his apron and read it out like he had just learned it to. Beckett. Beck for short. That's my name. Ever since that fateful moment, Arlie couldn't stop tasting Beck's name on her tongue, testing it, letting the name roll off her lips for the rest of the day. Beckett. Beck for short. And then, with a flurry of finger guns, that's my name. Is that supposed to mean something? Her friend Reese said. They were supposed to be walking in silence, but there Arlie was, shooting finger guns and saying, that's my name. Beck for short. One look at Reese confirmed Arlie might have been losing her mind. She straightened and disengaged her finger guns with a shudder. Just something I heard today. Ah, Reese twisted, hands in her pockets, and scanned the cityscape along the Hudson. She extracted one hand to block Arlie, leaning into the railing that separated them from the radioactive underwater hellscape below. Let me guess. You're back for one day and you're already obsessed with a guy? Psh, no. Oh my God, you're hopeless. I am not obsessed with him, she said, sputtering, completely hopeless. Reese grounded Arlie's exasperation with two raised eyebrows and a simple, Arlie, you're insane. How have you even had time to meet up with a guy? You're still jet-lagged. At the accusation, the heat in Arlie's body became a visceral substance writhing to her face. I didn't meet up with anyone. We just crossed paths, exchanged names, not even numbers. Reese's hip tipped against the railing, a smile still on her face. She sighed reverently as Arlie seethed, I'm serious. I'm so sure you are, Reese agreed, and shook out a pack of cigarettes she swore she'd given up the last time they saw each other. That was in London. She held one out in offering. Want one? Arlie squinted at her. Insincere of you. The cigarette hung morosely. You quit? Yeah, 5 months ago. Reese tucked both cigarettes back, which just had Arlie waving her hands and amending, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't. I mean, you can smoke. I don't care. I mean, I do care. Maybe you shouldn't actually smoke, but I'm not going to stop you. Reese watched all this with a bemused half-smile. The wind was catching in her cropped hair at such an angle that Arlie normally would have teased her friend about showing her forehead. Reese rarely showed her forehead, but now there was a scar, and Arlie tried not to even look at it. You're a goddamn mess, you know that, Reese said, but took Arlie up on the blanket request that she smoke when she damn well pleased. Even secondhand, the acrid aroma was one Arlie couldn't get enough of. Years ago, she never would have admitted to that. Now she liked the smell of cigarettes almost as much as she liked the smell of gasoline. Too much for something so deadly. Yeah, she agreed, and leant against the railing with Reese. Kind of a terrible time to quit. Reese's godfather and Arlie's father were one and the same. and that man was now dead. It didn't strike Arlie as hard as it should have, and she considered it convenient that her entire wardrobe was black to begin with. She leant far back, head tipping, and considered spiraling over into the probably poisonous waters. I really regret that decision. Reese was now exhaling a cloud of smoke into the dewy evening air. Remind me to tell our guys not to offer you cigarettes then, because I know they automatically will. Your old man was a chain smoker near the end of it. Arlie rolled her chin onto her shoulder and tried to see Reese from behind. Reese looked back at her, though. I'm surprised lung cancer didn't bite him in the ass. Oh, it did, but he died from a bullet before the cancer could do it, she said. Which, by the way, we haven't gone over the specifics. You know people are upset you missed the funeral. Let me guess, everyone who's on the list for attempted assassinations, she droned. As if I would have gone to Father's funeral. Wouldn't that have been a death sentence? Besides, his body wasn't even in the casket. That's the whole reason I go to funerals. Be real. It's true. I swear they swapped my aunt's body. She never looked like that in life. Regardless, Reese rolled her eyes, it does come off as weak, and people picked that up and stuck with it. And regardless of that, Arlie said, voice raising, I wasn't even in the goddamn country, so they can all go fuck themselves for all I care. That didn't stop her from imagining what it might have been like for her flight not to have been delayed by storms. If she had attended the funeral, she would have done so alone. For all of their barks, none of them were willing to get close enough to her to even think of biting. Reese said, and then voiced her thoughts as she always had since they were kids. No one would have showed up if you had been there anyway. Your father would have been rolling over in his grave if no one came to his funeral. Arlie snorted and agreed. They both inhaled the sharp scent of the water and the cigarette that glowed between Reese's fingers. As their breaths released, Arlie found herself smiling at Reese's profile, her scar. She had changed so much more than Arlie anticipated, but scar aside, it was all for the better. Reese was starting to look a lot like Arlie's godfather for the first time ever. Her shortish hair didn't help that matter one bit, but it suited her square jawline well. Shaky hair, eyes a little more hollow, bluer than ever. Arlie thought her friend was perfect. The Archer's still around, Reese commented, and just the word had Arlie sneering, mood souring. If I were you, I'd start thinking about how to track this guy down. Everyone's still on edge that he's right in plain sight. Hence me not going to the funeral. Plain delayed aside. For all we know, he could be a relative. I seriously doubt that. He could be hired by one of our relatives who has a hankering for justice. Reese's haughty voice had Arlie in stitches. As she bubbled with chaotic laughter, Reese said, Seriously, the Archer's being called a real classic hero these days since taking out Croft. Arlie reached over and plucked one of the silver hairs on Reese's head. Reese sighed again but didn't resist, eyes closed as she commented, You seem happy. I like it here. No. You like that guy that lives here. Shut up! Reese's cackles rose up as she dodged Arlie's tackles. She chased her friend, arms swinging to latch onto her. Eventually they were forced to retire from the boardwalk, considering now the clocks were ringing 2 a.m. and the drunkards and hooligans were out and about. Arlie wasn't worried about that fact, but people without powers, people like Reese, certainly would be. Chapter 2. Take a break, they say. You deserve it, they say, Beck mocked as he made gross expressions, locking up the front door of the shop. You should have fun once in a while. I don't see why you're complaining, his boss, Maeve, said from the front counter where she was counting the drawer. You really should have fun. It's not every day a hero takes out a mafia boss who's been terrorizing the city for, I don't know, decades? It was dumb luck and you know it, he said, arms out, flailing. He threw his apron off. You should have been the one to get all the flowers. You should have gotten all the flowers, not me. I think you mean fame. Fame, schmame. Having my name in the newspapers has been pretty fun, though. Certified hero saves the day. He popped a foot on a stool, hand on his hip, fist in the air. With a bit too much pressure, the stool crashed seconds later. The sound of it clattering led Maeve to drop a stack of pennies with a yelp, followed by a distressed moan. Don't make loud noises like that. It still freaks me out. I don't know about you, but I'm going to be paranoid for months, she said, ducking down to gather up the coins. She shouted from out of view, and anyway, I doubt anyone's going to try and pull anything for the next few days. Beck shoved the stool back into place. Doesn't change the fact that there are still going to be damsels in distress on the east side, west side, every which side of the city. He flexed his muscles and posed as Maeve popped up with a dull look. Oh, come on, have a little faith in me. Charlie's right. You do have a one-track mind. Harsh. Here are your tips. You can head out back and I'll finish. When did Charlie even say that? I do not have a one-track mind. Beck, focus. You're done for the day. Goodbye, Beck. He grabbed his tips, Maeve nudged him, and added, "Be safe," to his receding back. He gathered his energy for a peppy, "Will do," and was out the door before she could say anything else. He whistled around the corner just so he could arrive in time for his favorite show, the most gorgeous, precious, perfect individual closing up shop across the street. Amidst smoothie bars, coffee shops, and colorful restaurants sat the flower shop of Beck's dreams, and the owner's daughter just outside. Juniper Jove. Just in time, Beck thought, with rising giddiness as he hurriedly looked both ways and ran across the street. He was just hopping the curb with a skip in his step as Juniper locked her doors and stepped away, checkered skirt swishing. "Juniper, hey, how are you?" When Juniper looked, Beck stared. He grew completely and totally stupid. Maybe it was her bouncy ginger hair, or perhaps it was her wide doe eyes that made him melt like butter. It was hard to believe people as perfect as Juniper were allowed to exist. One time, Beck was blessed enough to discover that they attended the same gym, and he nearly ascended into heaven on the spot. Just from his distant vantage point at the coffee shop counter, he would never suspect Juniper had biceps like that, or thighs he wanted to. He shook his head, face hot. Juniper faced him with a smile and a hand to her cheek. "Thought I recognized your voice. Hey, you remembered my name." "Yeah, it comes with the job. You know how it is." Her smile could cure Beck of any and all diseases. It slanted into a calculated wince as she tried. "Your name's Beckett, right?" "Beck. Just Beck is fine." Oh my god. "Oh, I don't know. I always call you Beckett in my head. It has a nice ring to it." He tried to convince himself that she wasn't blushing too. That definitely wasn't a blush. Well, maybe it was. Maybe it was her makeup. He couldn't tell. She cleared her throat. "Anyway, how was work?" "It was great, actually. Yeah, what are you doing now?" "It's back to the apartment for me. And also, I meant to ask this afternoon when I stopped by for my afternoon joe. I could have sworn you had a cut on your cheek. It still looks pretty swollen." She pointed a delicate finger to Beck's face just as the walk sign blinked on. A passerby crossed behind them. Beck slapped a hand over where the cut used to be. His restoration powers were shit as it was, and it was just his luck that his crush noticed the blemish at all. Maeve was the one blessed with all of the restorative genes, and if it weren't for her coming in after the battle with Croft, Beck definitely would have been a goner. "Oh, I'm not on great terms with my cat yet. She's still just as aggressive as she was at the Humane Society, where I adopted her. I adopted an elderly cat. Seafoam." Beck's voice squeaked. He winced. Juniper hummed, full of thought and grace. She turned in the direction of home, their paths diverging. "That's so nice of you. I always loved to play with old cats there." Beck let out a breath of relief. "But anyway, I'm heading this way. I'll see you sometime." "Yeah, sometime." Beck took 2 long seconds to wave, and then 2 more just to stare at Juniper's receding back as she readjusted the strap on her purse. And then, dazed, Beck wandered his way around the adjacent side of the building so he could scream silently into the night. As if his victory the other day wasn't great enough, suddenly now the universe gave him the permission to talk to Juniper? It was unbelievable! Charlie would never believe this. He finished his little victory prance before bounding off down the sidewalk with thrilled skips. Another great day for Beckett Fletcher. His high. Sorry. His high lasted all the way to the apartment, where, all the way up, he whistled and hummed a song or two. In the midst of flipping through his keys, Charlie's voice cut through the door, saying, "Enough singing! I could never catch a break with you!" It just made Beck belt it out, lyrics and all, as he sashayed into the apartment like it was the set of a competition. "Come on, sing!" He slid into the living room, arms up. This just succeeded in making him a larger target, one that Charlie could hit with a well-aimed pillow chucked directly at Beck's crotch. He doubled over with a pang, a grunt, and struggled to balance. "Hey, easy! No low blows!" He landed on one foot and whipped out his arm to block Charlie's next attack. His arm hit it on a downward stroke, successfully spiking it into the glass coffee table. They both held their breaths before letting it out in one large sigh. Another coffee table saved, no thanks to Beck. "Struggles of superhuman strength. You can never be sure when you'll break something next," Charlie remarked. "Hey, I do pretty well, I think." "Yeah, because no one would expect super strength coming from a guy with sticks for arms." Beck took the insult with grace, mostly because it was a bald-faced lie. Though he'd given up bulking years ago, training wasn't the same. It wasn't realistic, and gyms weren't built for super strength, and so his arms had stretch marks where he'd lost evidence of his training years. He flexed his arms just to see, thinking, it's not like I'm benching cars every day. Going to the gym was just a formality at this point. Habit, even. Charlie resumed lounging on the couch, headphones on and laptop glowing blue on his face. Charlie's hair was a frantic disarray when pulled back in a ponytail. I can't imagine Juniper's all that into annoying, dancing, singing clowns. Charlie yelped at the incoming pillow. Beck dove for him across the coffee table to tackle him with tickles. Charlie howled with laughter, kicking and flailing with his laptop raised over his head while pleading for mercy. Eventually, Beck gave up so that the laptop could be spared. "Don't do that when I'm working! What's the matter with you?" Beck flopped back onto the cushions, throwing his arm over them, and with a deep sigh of absolute bliss, he said, "Oh, nothing at all. Just that I talked to Juniper today. It was a religious experience." I'm in shock, genuinely. Yeah, right. Call an ambulance. She said it was neat that we adopted Seafoam. Green. It's totally just Seafoam. You keep subtracting her surname. That's the entire reason why we picked that name in the first place. And anyway, why does Juniper even know about Green? Just as Becca was about to argue against it, though Charlie was entirely right, he was stopped by Charlie jackknifing up. Alert. Wait, where is Green anyway? Chapter 3. Most of the Croft merchandise was confiscated in the scuffle with the heroes. Suppliers had scattered to the wind in fear of repercussions crashing down on the Croft empire. Despite the fact that Arlie Croft was never fully associated with the business, she buckled at the thought of everything being confiscated. Just knowing that their supplies were still in existence somewhere out there, under constant surveillance, was bullshit. So much had been uprooted in the last week, and many of her father's most trustworthy people were taken from them. Arlie seethed at the pointlessness of it all. Of all of the places a hero could have found her father, on top of a massive explosion following the event at the shipyards, one of their buildings was reduced to charred rubble. The remains were minimal, and there was no sign of the Archer anywhere. Reese had pictures of the destruction, the media coverage of the event, and it was enough to confirm for Arlie that no average person with powers could have lived through that. No ordinary hero could have either, not unless they were gifted with more than one power. Being dealt more than one card on top of the Archer's supposed super strength, like Restoration, for example, was enough to convince Arlie that this hero was an opponent only she and Reese could exterminate. The car rolled up to the parking garage beneath an apartment complex, where she was escorted to the top floor. All the way up, she stared at herself through the elevator's spotless mirrors. More importantly, she analyzed the way Croft guards solidified themselves at her sides like statues. Her hands itched to flatten her jacket lapels, to fix her hair, her fingers shook in her pockets. Funny how leather is all that stops these guys from seeing that I'm losing it, she thought. Her father had done so much more to conceal his identity. Hats and sunglasses, surgical masks. Arlie never tolerated glasses. Hats ruined her hair anyhow. The elevator's reflection parted to the firm, elegant figure of Reese waiting for her on the other side. Just in time, she said. I should hope so, Arlie said. You should really cover up more. There's no point hiding my identity, she said. Everyone thinks I'm nothing but a ghost anyway. My father pretended I was dead to him for a reason. That was just a rumor that you died. I found it kind of hilarious, Reese said, slightly offended by Arlie's flippant dismissal. Arlie remembered the day the rumor started and how Reese had video called her, laughing her ass off. Reese had brushed away a tear and said, "Whew, boy, I'm so glad I went along with it when our aunt asked me if you died." Arlie sighed and said, "Well, I did absolutely nothing to dissuade them from it, and you helped, asshat." Reese spared her a wink. "You're welcome." That evening, in the quiet sanctuary of an ambiguous penthouse, Arlie was shown the security footage of what could be considered the lamest fight attempt known to mankind. Arlie was well aware of what her father was capable of. Half of what Arlie was capable of came from him, and that part of her lived in the shadows. Shadows were an incredible force behind Sebastian Croft's reign over New York City. But the lamest part of the fight was the Archer himself. It was the first actual footage Arlie witnessed of her father's death, and it was all scavenged from the wireless security camera on site that went down in ashes that night. He wasn't alone, Reese said, pausing the footage. She cocked her hip, hand to the table, and said, "Before the Archer broke through the warehouse building, the media didn't cover them. Seems to be a team of 3, and the woman there has an incredible invisibility palette. The only color it seems she can't take away is white, which is to be expected." "Impressive," Arlie hummed. "Is that all she can do?" "We're speculating that she has restorative powers as well. She healed the hero Archer." The technician with them pulled up a severely zoomed-in photograph that was rendered to precision. The hero was partially invisible under his partner's powers, emerging from the cloak of total coverage to swing the arc of his bow. The motion was frozen as if in stone, but Arlie could see how vicious of a blow that must have been on her father, who had been tracking the woman's shadow rather than that of the hero who killed him. "The bow," Arlie said. "Is it related to any of his powers?" At this, the technician spoke. "No, but the bow seems to have been made special to his super strength. The cord itself would be like an average man trying to bend the suspension on a bridge." The technician cycled to a rendition of the Archer's bow, but still Arlie focused on the minimized photo of her father. "The bow is completely black as well. Dark hues seem to be the invisibility hero's comfort zone, which is convenient for you." Arlie leant her cheek into her hand, humming. "Incredibly so." Reese sat on the edge of the table, backed by the bow. Where am I? Backed by the bow and the frame preceding Arlie's father's death. The invisibility film had smeared the man's face into obscurity. "You aren't seriously considering fighting them, are you? My team can take care of them." It took serious effort for Arlie to move her eyes away from the heroes in their black vigilante costumes, the distracted fury behind her father's mask. She peeled her eyes up to Reese with a deep breath, straightening. "Show me your plans and I might reconsider." Beck gradually, eventually, woke to the sensation of Seafoam settling her fat ass on his stomach. He spent a solid few minutes just lying there, battling the new pressure on his bladder. And eventually, he managed to extract himself from bed and escape the wrath of Seafoam's fury when he moved. I keep having these ridiculous dreams about June. I feel like she'd like that nickname, Beck said. He was only moderately surprised to find Charlie awake in the kitchen, being the source of that heavenly roasted aroma of fresh coffee. Please don't tell me about it, Charlie deadpanned. I think I've been getting them more frequently ever since dealing with Croft. I don't have anything to do now. I want to go out again. When are we going to pull another heist? New York is full of potential heists. You make it sound like a dangerous place. It's not that bad, usually. I get that. But in my dreams, the city is, it's like a maze. It is a maze. Trying to find June. And when I find her, I'm like, okay, I'm going to profess my undying love for her. And so I do. And then she just changes the topic. And every time, without fail, we end up sleeping together, which I feel really guilty about, dreaming about that. Oh my god. But the entire time she's talking about elderly cats at the Humane Society, like she doesn't even care that we're totally in the throes of love. I knew this was going to get sexual, but I told myself your subconscious wouldn't do that. But it did. And now I feel betrayed. Think of how June feels. She doesn't even know my subconscious is torturing me like this. You need to get a grip, man. Maybe if I really just want her to realize that we're perfect for each other. Okay, but do you really know anything about this woman? Yes, I totally know stuff about her. Beck collapsed horizontally on the couch. Charlie paused to step away, his seat plan foiled and redirected to the armchair. Beck ticked off Juniper's facts on his fingers. She works at the flower shop at the marketplace, and we go to the same gym I sometimes go to and break the equipment at. That was one time. And anyway, June volunteers at a nursing home on the west side where her grandma used to live, and I just think that's the sweetest thing I've ever heard. You mean her grandma dying? No, I mean that she works at a nursing home for free. She does everything out of the goodness of her heart and is the purest soul I know. You can't even compare to her. That's because I'm not pure. I have goodness going for me, though. Beck's phone pinged, the final alarm before he would consider himself so totally screwed and late for work. He bounded to his feet and, minutes after changing, Charlie caught him by the door, calling from the living room. Don't forget your patch! You got the alert, right? Please tell me you didn't mute it. I did not mute it, Beck said, backpedaling all the way back to the bathroom where their patch stash sat in the cabinet. Oh my god, what a tongue twister. And the metal box, now old and worn from use and maybe possibly falling a time or two, was embossed with a military-grade emblem. He plucked the sticky corner off the skin from his bicep, counted to 3, and ripped the whole thing off. All the while, Beck cried out in agony. Charlie was cursing him out for muting his notification. Charlie came in not long after Beck cut the newest pack in half. Cheers, he said, tipping the corner to Beck's square. Together, they stuck the patch on their arms. Charlie was poking and prodding at the tender skin where the old patch was, when Beck realized something. Hey, why are you only just now doing this if your alert went off this morning? Beck said, but Charlie was distracted, poking at his arm and leaving the bathroom. Hypocrite! Have fun at work, Charlie said. Beck was out the door before either of them could exchange more blows. He was running down the street to Altera before Maeve could chew him out for being a minute late. He was clocked in just in time to throw on his apron, spin up to the register, and hear the doorbell chime as a familiar customer arrived in black. Beck wasn't one to forget faces, especially when they came through twice in 2 days. But there was something in this one's tired eyes that appealed to him. Maybe it was his bleeding heart wondering, damn, what kind of shit did she go through last night? Whatever the case, Beck knew a nice interaction would go a long way. Back again, I see, he teased as the girls sidled up to the cash register with a meek smile. Seems so. Nice to see you again, Beck. What'll it be this time? I might try your cappuccino. I heard it's good. She glanced up at the menu to catch the price as Beck rung it up. He noted the septum piercing, the sharp line of her cupid's bow. He met the ice in her eyes. For here is fine. Mug it is, he declared. I haven't seen you around here before yesterday. Did you move recently? Yeah, actually. Cool. Where are you usually then? Traveling. Mister. Traveling. She passed him her cash, and as he counted it, she teetered on the brink of continuing. He offered a smile. I was just in France, actually. At Beck's appreciative, impressed hum, her tentative tone dropped to a flat, it's not that exciting. Oh, it's not? The media has fooled me. And Pinterest. As the girl laughed, the door chimed, and the sun caught on a halo of red hair Beck couldn't possibly miss. You'll have to tell me about it sometime. Arlie. He jotted it down on the cup, kicking himself for forgetting. Right, knew that. I'll have your order up at the end of the counter shortly. As Arlie walked off, Beck's full attention pivoted to the one and only Juniper Jove. Beck already had her order in the system when she said, "Good morning, Beckett." "Good morning to you too, Juniper. Great start." That was supposed to be in his head. That's like in italics. Sorry, footnote. Great start is in italics. He leaned up against the counter as Juniper busied herself with pulling out her card. When she glanced up to make eye contact with Beck and completely rock his world for a solid 2 seconds, Beck thought his heart stopped. She was saying, "I woke up and the day was already great. I made some tea, I sat out on the balcony, and it's gonna be a good day." Beck could feel himself bubbling up in the form of heart-shaped balloons as he transcended into the glorious plane of existence where he could listen to Juniper describe her morning over and over again. He could watch the way Juniper pulled back her hair for hours, which he had before. There was a video on one of Juniper's social medias where in the background she flipped her hair, and it was perhaps the most majestic thing ever caught on camera. Beck was so enthralled by Juniper rattling on about how her coworker called in and said she wouldn't have to come into work today that he completely missed Arlie across the room, whose expression practically snapped in two. It was easy for anyone to see what sort of guy Beck was. Charismatic, loud, beautiful, but most of all, the way he centered his attention was nothing like the way he was looking at that tall, bright, and gorgeous girl standing at the counter now. "This is unbelievable," Arlie seethed internally as Beck leant his elbows onto the counter between him and the red-headed goddess across from him, beaming dreamily at the way the woman tied up her hair while chatting. Arlie caught her fingers twisting in her own hair, her frown fixed so securely on her face it hurt to crack it. Her hair was black. Black. She couldn't picture a color more opposite on the spectrum from ginger. Since there weren't any other customers, the girl stood around talking at Beck for a solid 15 minutes. Arlie sat through every second of it, transitioning from hopelessness to raw fury. "I have no right to be bitter about this," she thought, but that did nothing to stop her from boiling over at the idea of Beck and how she'd wasted 24 hours thinking about him. How could she have taken time out of her day to stop by the Altera coffee shop again, even though she much preferred the well-oiled espresso machine at her own apartment, all just to talk to him for a moment? Reese is right, I am hopeless, she thought, souring and sipping her cappuccino. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't made by Beck either. His coworker had delivered it. Arlie was so distracted by her own anger that she hadn't realized the bright, bubbly girl had left until she looked up from her blank computer screen and saw the counter empty and someone's eyes on her. It was a sensation she was used to and overcame a while ago, but this time it was Beck looking at her. Warmth blossomed in her chest like a hot beverage down too fast. Heat seeped through every part of her, warmed her, as Beck looked away quickly to smile to himself. He went on talking to his coworker. She didn't know what that look was. Was it pity? Was it maybe just curiosity? Arlie couldn't be sure, but it did wonders to make her forget about the customer that stole Beck's heart and took it with her out the door. Whatever it happened to be, the glory of it faded, and Arlie was left scowling at her computer until she finished her drink and decided this wasn't worth the effort. She shut her computer and stuffed it into her bag. She dumped her dishes in the bin just as Beck flipped up part of the counter to enter the dining space and fetch the bus bin. "You know," Beck said, swinging in and hoisting the bin up under one arm. He did so with such ease that Arlie was startled by the heat in her own face. "I hope the coffee here is better than in France. I like seeing you around here." He followed up with a wink. Y'all, if he didn't do that, the plot wouldn't happen. Oh my god. She had never frozen like that before. She didn't move even as he returned behind the counter, bin overhead. Eventually, she managed to say, "It isn't, by the way, and I don't have much of a choice." Beck laughed as Arlie scurried out with her coat half on and bag in hand. She was sure her guards were taken aback because she swore one startled in the passenger seat. With a shaky sigh, she shoved her arm into the sleeve of her coat. She shrugged it on, turned away, and calibrated. Who cares if it's a waste of time, she thought, and proceeded to think about Beck for the rest of the day. Okay, that's the end of chapter 3, I think, and that was approximately 5,829 words. I say approximately, that's exactly what it was. Out of 97,496 words. So, I need to go. My cat's yelling at me. I don't know what I'm going to do with this recording. I've been thinking about how to transfer it to Instagram because it's longer than 5 minutes. 10 minutes? I think there's a 10-minute limit. Not worth it. I don't want people to look at this. So I might just post it on YouTube for easy access. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know what account to put it on. I have like too many YouTube accounts and like nothing on any of them. But they all like use my real name. So I gotta make a new account. Okay. Well, if you go on the Wattpad, the good old Wattpad, I made some cute little graphics of all the characters. There's a character aesthetic page, and it also includes all of the trigger warnings. I should have preceded this with trigger warnings. Shoot. Okay, well, none of them have happened yet. The warnings, here, I'll read them to you. We got some warnings. We got gore, claustrophobia, on-screen death, PTSD, drugs, and not all of the characters are good people. Because I don't know if you've noticed this on Wattpad. None of you are probably reading on Wattpad, but I'm keeping up with my research. Every, like, quote-unquote dark romance book is, like, preceded with not all characters are good people. If you don't like the characters, don't read. Or something like to that effect, like disavowing what the characters do, especially on like the mafia books on Wattpad, which is crazy. I mean, it's not crazy, it like makes sense, but people just like are not able to separate fiction from reality anymore, and so I think that's why, or whatever. I don't know what it is about like my Voltron era. I was saying in that other Instagram reel, I'm about to go on a tangent, all right? I was saying in that other Instagram reel about how I used to be like really prolific in the Voltron era of mine. Not prolific in that I wrote good stuff, but prolific in that I wrote too much. And like Exhibit A, this book, like the fanfic version of this is incomprehensible. I was always better at starting fics, like writing fics, than actually the meat of the middle of the fic. So do with that what you will. But I've converted Voltron fanfics before, and those ones consistently got a lot of comments on Wattpad hating some of the characterizations that I used. Just like because my characters were not good people. Like they were all deeply flawed, and I don't know if I would have put not all characters are good people in the warnings at the start of those, because they weren't dark romance. It was just like college romances. And the characters were just like deeply flawed and like kind of evil and like making bad decisions and being generally mean to each other. And I'm like, I can't believe I wrote that. I haven't encountered any of that in this rewrite of this book, but this was like one of my last Voltron fics that I wrote. So it was like pretty like end of the era. In Voltron, I'm just gonna keep talking. Because if you're at this point, you're bored and you need my voice to fill your ears. So, what was I gonna say? Oh, in my Voltron era, I write very differently now. Like, even just like the active writing is very different. And it's mostly because when I started in Voltron, and even before Voltron, I was a one manuscript at a time girly. And I wish I would have stayed that way. But then I started interacting with fandom people. I used to be in my own little silo. I didn't talk to anyone. I don't even think I was like interacting with the comments. I was keeping to myself. And I was just like liking things on Tumblr, like reblogging things on Tumblr. And then I started like actually talking to people in DMs. And then I completely changed the way that I wrote. And so I remember the day that I decided to start another fic before I finished the previous one, and that was the downfall. Like, I would routinely pump out fics, like, once, maybe twice a month, full-fledged fics, like, could be novels, like, each one was, like, well over 70,000 words, usually. I was, like, a multi-chapter fic girly, and that's why I wrote 30 fics in like 2 years. It's crazy. And like you can look back at them, they're all like substantial in weight. I wasn't really into one shots. I have like a couple maybe from that era, and then like you can see where I like downfall, like unfinished fic. Let me give you some more of these warnings. Core relationship in smut is MXW, so het. Or what is it? Half yaoi, half yuri. And then there are additional explicit relationships, but I haven't gotten to those scenes yet. Like, there didn't used to be smut in my Voltron era. I was very fade to black back then. It was the Wattpadder in me, I think. And also, I just, like, didn't write smut back then. I don't even think that I really read it, to be honest. Who was I? This is what happens when I talk to people. I get corrupted. So, the additional explicit relationships is women loving women and men loving men. And in parentheses, I have XM, maybe? So, like, there might be, like, a throuple going on. I haven't really decided. And you haven't even met those two guys yet. Ooh, girl. One of them, I need to build out his character a bit more. He didn't exist in the original one. Neither of them existed in the original one. I just, like, added them in. And one of them is my favorite character, and he is, like, very significant to the plot, because now there's, like, a better plot now. The plot has meat. And then I included this in my rewrite of Attachment Theory, which is now Theory of Attachment on Wattpad. And that was a JJK fic with Sukuna and Megumi, because they were my bread and butter in my JJK era. And I reread that frequently. I, like, go to my favorite scenes, which is when classic Megumi running away, but in my brain he's no longer Megumi because I've reread the original version so much, which is, his name is Micah. Micah and Alistair. Oh my god. I'm, like, geeking about them. When Micah runs away from his best friend Benny, and he's like, we aren't roommates anymore. I'm gonna be in a sugar baby relationship with this older man. His name is Eugene Lennon. Anyway, I have a warning at the start of that fic too, because I also have, like, a warning section, because that's classic in Wattpad, because Wattpad doesn't have a very comprehensive tagging system, and I think that they could, and I really believe that they will in the future, because it's already improved a lot. They don't have an exclusion feature. I don't think they only have inclusion tagging structure. Until then, Wattpadders leave their trigger warnings and content warnings at the very first chapter above it. And this one says, all sex is consensual in Love, Lies, and Loaded Guns. So you can count on that, beach. And then I've written, I've truly fallen in love with the cast, and I wish them all happy endings. To be honest, I don't know how this ends. I am planning on, like, going back to the manuscript when it, like, the original fic, when it makes sense. But right now, I'm just, like, on a 50k tangent, to be honest. But eventually I'm going to get back into it. And the original fanfic, I think, was over 100,000 words. It was, like, 120,000 words. So this one is going to be meaty. It's probably, I'm going to be scrapping a lot of the original, so it'll probably end up being around the same amount, maybe, like, 150,000 words. That's the plan. And then I follow up that note about wanting them all to have happy endings, because I don't actually know if they have happy endings. No, this isn't meant to be ominous, but it does sound rather ominous, doesn't it? Below, I have visuals for each of the characters. They're just sort of like vibe checks. I did a vibe check with Theory of Attachment as well, and some of my other books, because Wattpadders do that. We do vibe checks. Why am I saying we? Okay, it is kind of me. It includes the character's name. So we have Arlie. She is that Gemini? I should know that. That's my... No, she's Pisces. Is that Pisces? What is it? I can't remember. Pisces symbol. That's not telling me anything. Yeah, it is. Okay, so she's a Pisces. Classic. Her job is Mafia Princess. And I also include their powers and their orientation. She is... for her orientation, I put hopeless romantic in parentheses, het. And some of the characters, you don't know their powers, and so I, like, sometimes I say unknown or none, because a few of the characters just simply don't have the receptors. So on a person's, like, cells or whatever, they have receptors that aren't usual to our biology, and that is what causes the powers. And so the patches that Beck and Charlie put on, and Maeve uses them, is what activates the receptors. They, like, adhere, like, it, like, it's like a drug that activates the receptors, and so then they're able to use their powers. So if they stop using the patches, they will no longer be able to use their powers. And so at the beginning, when Arlie's narration like talked about the ban on powers, it's because you have to be like specially selected to be permitted to have access to patches. Obviously people like get them illegally, hence the Croft Empire. So Charlie, Beck, and Maeve, we'll get into it in like later chapters, they are legally allowed to use patches, and they actually work for an agency that is like affiliated with government. It's not like government agency, they're not like a part of the government, but their agency is used kind of like a 911 operator. It's like assistance for law enforcement, which we will discover very quickly is corrupt. Oh, you guys don't know that yet. I think that gets revealed in... Yes, that gets revealed in the next chapter when they get their next appointment. Their next heist, as Beck calls them. So anyway, I'm excited for you guys to meet my favorite character. I don't know if I should talk about him, because I will talk about him forever. I love him. Okay, bye.